but this is John Wagner with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, and I'd like to welcome you all today to this WebEx on which we will have a guest speaker, Chuck Lepard, on to walk us through the regulatory compliance with the HPE's Compliance Data Exchange. Chuck has been working with us over the past 3 years and has become very familiar with our industry and our needs as we have worked our way through this process. So with no further ado, I will it over to Chuck to have him share with us CDX and what it can do for regulatory compliance.
Thanks much, John. I appreciate this opportunity to address the group, and I hope that we're going through, if anybody has any questions, they'll please pause me and go ahead and ask your questions as we're going. For the end, I'd like to introduce myself, talk a little about why CDX came to be and how it can help. Then the majority of the time actually showing you how CDX operates, and then close with any questions on any things we haven't covered. My background is I've worked for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and its acquisitions for a little bit more than 30 years. I am a Navy veteran, and before starting with HP, I was a millwright. I statistical process control, Six Sigma Green Belt. I've spent my career on the plant floor. I've worked in just about every type of manufacturing endeavor you can imagine. I like to say I've done everything from assemble battleships to disassemble chickens, and it's amazing how much they have in common. I am very active in the compliance space in a number of organizations that are focused on doing activities exactly like what AEM is trying to do in a variety of industries, some of which are suppliers to AEM members and some of which are customers to AEM members. My education background is degrees in electrical and computer engineering and computer science, and I've been in the field for a little bit over 25 years. The challenge that CDX was designed to address is the fact that looking at the data that you need to acquire for these compliance activities, it's all available throughout the supply chain. It's not available to the OEMs or to the tier ones. It's actually requiring you to drill down to the people who are mix chemicals to create materials that are used to fabricate your products. So once you've gotten to the assembly stage or even at the component stage, you've kind of lost a lot of the information that's necessary. You've got to drill down further to get to the people who really know the information. Obviously, there's concerns anytime you're doing this type of multi-company connection, simply because each of those companies has things that they consider their secret sauce, as it were. There's information that they don't necessarily want to disclose to everybody. And sometimes even the fact that somebody is purchasing something versus building it themselves is something they don't necessarily want their customers to know. So what we need is a way to drill through the supply chains, get the information you need for compliance purposes, while at the same time protecting the intellectual property of the companies involved in such a way that they're not resistant to providing the information. The way we offer to do that is CDX. It creates that linkage for all the companies, hide information that needs to be hidden, and sharing the information that needs to be reported in such a way that those at the top have everything that they need to be able to do their compliance efforts. The thing that's very important is CDX does all this in the cloud. Your suppliers are understandably concerned about their intellectual property if it's behind your firewall. So what assurances your IT staff may provide that they're not going to access that data. The fact that they could can be perceived as a business risk. And therefore, having the information available to anybody who's able to access the internet, but not, allowing anybody who can access the internet to enter the data, but not allowing the information to be accessed by anybody other than those who create it, is an assurance that companies want. And having an independent third party such as the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise who's overseeing that data reassures your suppliers that, number one, their data is secure, And number two, it's only going to be accessed in accordance with the terms of use on the system. X saves you a lot of time and money. Anybody who's ever gotten into a new IT type of project, gone into trying to design a solution, know that the first couple of releases usually are not what you're going to really want to use in production. It would be like trying to put the first prototype of a product out on the market. It just doesn't work. We've over 15 years of learning what works and what doesn't. I'm not saying we never made mistakes. We made quite a few of them at first. That was 15 years ago. So by using our solution, you get from the lessons that we've learned in over a decade and a half, and you get the end result without having to make all those mistakes yourself. In addition, CDX can improve the information quality that you're receiving. Run what we call, or what I call, a spell check equivalent type of check. We do basic validation to make sure that the information that your suppliers are giving you makes sense. A good example of this is if somebody's telling you that something's made of steel, you know, well, there better be some iron in it. If you reported any iron, then something's probably wrong with the data, and it's not even worth your review yet. Generally, what happens is when suppliers submit 1752 or other non-validated submissions, you end up doing the validation for your suppliers, and they've kind of reverse delegated the error checking up the supply chain. CDX, it puts it back on the supplier to do validation, which is why we encourage companies to have suppliers in the data into CDX. You get that validation in the hands of the people who can actually act upon it. That's really an important lesson learned for us is you don't want to have a separate solution for every regulation that you're dealing with. If the regulations are extremely different, you may have any option, and you may simply need to make sure that these solutions communicate with one another. But it's very important to have a product-centric focus. Your business of producing your product, not in the business of doing compliance. The tool makes you learn everything about a certain regulation, whether it be REACH or RoHS or conflict minerals. It's forcing you to do something that's not your core strength. If, however, the tool recognizes that you build a product and then it bounces the regulations up against your product composition, now it's something that's playing to your strengths. And the product recognizes your business and recognizes the business value that they can bring, adding to your strengths rather than taking you in a completely different direction. We enhance CDX about every quarter. We do a release with new capabilities, and feedback from our existing customers is what drives our enhancements. Generally speaking, what people are telling us now, go into the enhancement list for the next planned releases, and it's what drives us. So you added benefit of not only do you get the enhancements based on the functionality that you're seeing, you're getting things based on things that your supply chain are using. So if you've got your manufacturers somewhere in your supply chain, the industry probably has very different foci than you have. So if they're bringing the data into CDX and telling us what's not quite right for polymers or for rubbers, elastomers, it allows us to get their feedback and allows you to receive the benefits from their enhancements. Most recent enhancements have been focused on ways to do things more easily, more efficiently than having to type everything in. When companies first get started, all times in is the easiest way to do it, simply because you don't really understand all of the topics and know what's going on. Once you get good at that and you've learned how to do it well, we do such as Excel import a list of the information that you want to do. So for example, to go out to your suppliers and request that they provide a material data sheet for your products, you now import the information from an Excel spreadsheet. You also use linkages to your in-house systems via web services, which is kind of a modern equivalent of what used to be known as application programming interfaces or APIs. If anybody's dealt with an IT project where somebody had to interface through an API. That was the way it was done for many years when all the solutions were in-house and behind the firewall. Now that the cloud has become a more recognized and acceptable way of gathering information, services has replaced that and allows your in-house system to talk to a cloud-based solution while still keeping sure everything is secure and tight. So we've been performing our additional capabilities to do step-by-step processes with a regulation wizard for reporting. The ability to add additional attachments for things that you might have gotten to the point where you're vetting each field one at a time, but you still want to have records on file to support things. The idea that you might have multiple part numbers for a particular part, or you might have a part family that you're trying to gather data on. Additional data accuracy validations, the ability to tie your material data and your conflict minerals data together, and then some enhancements that were actually purchased by one of our customers as what we call a company-specific enhancement. Anytime there's something that somebody wants in CDX and they're not on our list of high priorities, or it's not something that we think will be leveraged by a wide variety of our clients, there's always the options for a customer to choose to fund that activity themselves. That's never required, but it is something it is a way to get something that you're looking for that think is specific to your company's needs. Other things we've been doing are enhancing the performance so that we can perform better in regions where you may have as good a network connectivity as we're used to. We're finding that there are still places in the world that are using dial-up modems to get to the internet. So reducing the amount of network bandwidth that's required to connect and making it easier for folks to be able to access the system and to break down their company within the system and set up a structure that matches their reporting activities. So for example, if you've got a global operation and you are looking at certain regulations for operations within the US and a different set of regulations for operations within Europe, COX now allows you to set it up that way and to connect your suppliers, depending where you're shipping the materials that we're going to assemble into our final product, you may be asked different questions. This also says coming soon, support for China RoHS and California Proposition 65. This has actually been added. This is now a current capability, and it also illustrates one of the other strengths of CDX. The architecture is such that as long as a regulation follows a pretty standard form of option where you're looking for the chemicals that go into the product, CDX architecture is designed in such a way that we can add new regulations very quickly. It took about a week to add these two regulations, again, because they follow the same model as RoHS and REACH do already. So it was simply a matter of adding new substance lists to the product. For today's demonstration, what I'm going to deal with is trying to deal with a typical real-world scenario. We have a company named PM Global. PM Europe operations are going to ask for a material data sheet, a material declaration, a product that PM Plastic Metal supplies to PM Europe. So PM Global will send a request to PM Plastic Metal for a declaration, and PM Plastic Metal will reply with their actual declaration. This is usually one of the most common use cases, one of the things that people really need to do in the business world. So this is a good model of how the product works. Before we get into the demo itself, are there any questions about the product or about the demo? Okay, not. Then let me go direct to the demo. COX is www.cdxsystem.com. And let me blow this up a bit. And CDX is the system that's accessible to anybody who has access to the internet and the capability to look there. Everything in the system is secure, and it actually operates on a couple of different servers. and you won't necessarily know where that server is located. That is one of the magic things of cloud services is the address that you enter in can redirect to anywhere. This has a number of benefits. Number one, if something were to happen to one of our data sites, the information is set up in such a way that it's copied between the data sites automatically in real time. So if for example, if Berlin, which is where one of our sites is located, were wiped off the map magically somehow, or was off the grid and didn't have power, you go over to another one of our data sites and you'd never even be aware that there was an interruption. There would not be an interruption in your service. Right home page on CDX, there's a lot of information available even before you get into the system. One of the things that we do is we conduct webinars very similar to the one I'm doing right now, and you can find out where those are at or when those are being conducted simply by clicking on news, and then you can sign up for any webinar that might be on a topic that's of special interest to your business. We have information on who is using CDX today, what industries, and why they've chosen CDX. We've all got additional information on how to get started on your order, what the costs are. Everything is generally disclosed, although AEM members have the benefits of some specially negotiated prices on the industry-wide buying power that offer substantial benefits and discounts beyond what is offered here. Those prices are confidential to AEM members and their suppliers, and that is an exclusive offer to AEM that is not something that has been typically done. Generally speaking, our prices are what are listed here. Only because AEM as an organization, all of your members collectively were to arrange for additional services following an extensive evaluation process where through they looked at a number of solutions and concluded CDX was the best solution available right now to meet your needs. There's also additional information available in support, including some very useful little tutorials. These are typically 3 to 5 minute long videos that will walk a company through how to do a specific operation. If you're dealing with folks who do not speak English and you've got suppliers in the regions, there is the opportunity to get things such as our user's guide in a variety of languages. This requires all entries to be in English, but it will display information in multiple languages. Somebody can at least understand the question that's being asked. Well, just by clicking on the German flag here, I can convert all of the content on the web page to German, and somebody who is working in Germany can operate in that language. We support the languages that are listed here, and additional languages can be added as the need arises. This gives an introduction to the system. I'm now going to proceed to the actual demonstration. Now, the thing I'm showing you right now is in the production system, but I don't want to do a demonstration in production. I want to point out that when you log in to CDX, if you ever forget your user ID or password, it's not even necessary to contact the help desk to retrieve them, as long as CDX knows your correct email address. You simply click on these links here, and CDX will email you the information that's necessary. You'll also find links for how to get help, how to get training, how to get access to our partners who will help with integration with your own systems, and other resources are available with quick links right here from the page. Now, this is again production. I'm going to move over to my office where I have logged in. And I'll start by explaining a little bit about how the information on the screen is laid out. Paradigms used throughout CDX. Across you get menus that have all of the different operations that you can perform. The most functions are duplicated onto a toolbar. And within there, you get different abilities sometimes, such as to add new, you specify what am I adding a new one of. Some terminology does take a little bit of learning. For example, material data sheet request is what would do to ask your suppliers for information. Search screen, such as the one I have displayed. Paradigm is at the top of the screen, you enter what am I searching for, and then at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the results. So as an example here, you can see that I've specified I want to see the standard material data sheets, accepted data sheets, and sheets that I've sent to my clients. I can simply clear these boxes and say I only want to see the standard material data sheets. This is a very important category. For products that are typically commodity products, such as a Z100 zinc coating, this is kind of information that is pretty standard for the product formulation, and it doesn't vary much in chemical composition. So companies that are producing things that are based on these standards are able to use and leverage these existing data sheets without having to recreate them, and there is no charge whatsoever for using those standard commodity type products. So for example, if you're building something out of tin steel, you come in and find the tin steel, and then you can open it up and see exactly what something that is valid constitutes tin steel, what composition is. Now, in case you're dealing with something that has a very simple composition, what I show you is a product that's a little bit more complicated. And with this, I'll be able to show some of the capabilities CDX provides. I'm going to a different browser window to do this just to show you that CDX supports multiple browsers, whether your company's using Internet Explorer or Chrome or Firefox, whatever you're using, we typically support. This is a data sheet that I have received from my suppliers. This particular supplier has built this demo product that I would normally incorporate into my assemblies. With the demo product, it's actually a water pump. And this pump has a temperature sensor and then a drum drive that's trying to, that supports the water pump. And an additional part here that has a lot of chemicals in it that are regulated. And by doing this, I show you a little bit of how the regulations work within CDX. Here to drill down into this, I can't do it one step at a time. And these symbols, again, are something that you take some learning to get used to. The red cubes represent a component or an assembly. If I drill into this one, these materials that make up my temperature sensor, drill down into my water pump, which is a little bit more complicated, you see this is actually an assembly of multiple parts. I can pull these out one at a time, or I can simply click this plus sign here and it expands them all out. When I do that, you see that I now get all of the contents of the product, and I can tell if I need to see things that are screen. With product, I now have the capability to see, is this product compliant against various regulations? We have both global substance lists, which represent most of the regulations, and I come in here and say, I'd like to look at this to see if there are substances of very high concern, which are candidates for regulation. Select Reach SVHCs highlights all of the chemicals in here that are regulated under the SVHC legislation. If I select them, it then tells me all of the regulatory instances that chemical is managed under. So people who operate believing that this is mostly a concern for operations in Europe can feel fairly quickly that that's necessarily true. If you're shipping through California or if you're shipping to California, the lead compound that's listed here is required to be labeled and to inform anybody who would be encountering that product there is in fact a health risk there. There's also a restriction under China RoHS. So shipping to either the U.S. or to Asia, as well as shipping to Europe, these substances that are restricted, and you will have an issue to make sure that your product is compliant regardless of who you're actually doing business with. Is there?
I have a question there.
Please.
That list is not, does that include things that are on the proposed list B or just things that are actually now restricted or declarable? The AEM seminar we talked about all different things that are proposed in the future steps. I'm just wondering, is those groups, including the list of known items?
Yes. This is including one of those lists. The substances that are restricted are on what is known as REACH Annex 14 and REACH Annex 17. Annex 14 are substances that are prohibited except for certain applications, certain usage. And Annex 17 is substances that are restricted for specific uses or applications. So those are the things that are actually prohibited except in certain circumstances. The VHC candidate list is a list of things that are currently declarable. They are candidates for restriction, but they have not actually been restricted yet. There are actually literally thousands of substances that are in REACH as chemicals that they want to look into. The REACH VHCs are the high priority items. These are the things that are on the bubble now and are being inspected to determine whether or not they should be prohibited or not. So the REACH VHCs are the things that they have a warning flag against them, so to speak. The things that are being considered but are not actively prohibited yet. The 14 and Annex 17 are those that are actively prohibited and are not permitted. So CX both tells you what is prohibited and what may be prohibited in the near future. These lists get updated twice a year, and CX updates the lists as they get changed. We employ a consultancy that is a regulatory and chemical advisory board that actually maintain those lists for us and ensure that we have the current information at all times. Have I answered your question?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So you see how
Manish, can we select multiple from the same drop-down considering Annex 14, Annex 17, and HVHC simultaneously?
Multiple simultaneously, but what you can do is create what is known as a company-specific list. If I create a company-specific list, I can combine multiple regulations. So in this case, I've made a company-specific list that comes RoHS and REACH Annexes 14 and 17 and substances of very high concern and conflict minerals. So by creating that company-specific list, I can list all of the chemicals that are important to my company and tell my suppliers, I need you to be reporting these. Six supports the idea that a company must require a full material declaration. If you have this 100% declaration checked, then as I am reporting everything that is in the product. Could be, we believe, the end goal of most companies, simply because if you don't do a full declaration and ask your suppliers for everything that's in the product, every time the regulations change, you end up going back to your suppliers and asking them, okay, the list for REACH has changed, now I need to get a new declaration from you. So material declarations give you a little bit of future proofing. How material declarations are a lot of work, and it's a lot of effort to get your suppliers to provide them. So many companies start out doing is saying, we are going towards full material declaration, and you will get a request for a full material declaration in the future. But now, we're asking for a declaration that provides all of the chemicals that are on the following lists. And this would be a good example to say we want all of the ROS or ROHS plus our REACH Article X14s and 17s and HCs and the conflict minerals. So any of the substances on this list or in your product, we want a partial declaration that discloses all of those items. So it gives you the capability to do essentially what you were looking for. It's just an additional step. That list is then something that you can send your suppliers and say, you must report all of these things. So it provides a little bit better way of getting to that information in some ways. Have I answered your question?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we do also provide substance lists that are not necessarily regulated. There can be valuable business information in some other types of substance lists. One example of this is what is known as, in some cases, the rare earth chemicals. Rare earth elements are those that are critical in certain applications and are used for particular products, but have relatively small amounts of them that are available. And I had a personal experience with one with lithium ion paste. Lithium is a rare earth, and it's used in rechargeable batteries. I was working for a company that was making a rechargeable battery for a vehicle, for an automotive vehicle. And overnight, the price of that lithium paste tripled because a consortium of lithium mines got bought up, and a small number of companies had a virtual monopoly over the lithium supplies, and so they could charge whatever they wanted. And literally, from one night to the next night, the price tripled. So being able to identify where you might have something such as a rare earth in your product that could be a risk to your business, high value, as well as being able to look at things that are regulated. So it's not only is driving you towards regulation compliance, it's also helping to address some aspects of sustainability and helping you to identify things that could be risk to your business in the future. Within CDX, this is a good example of what the end goal is: to get a submission from your supplier that tells what's in the product and is their exposure. You're not limited to doing this one product at a time. The offer is the capability to perform what we call a where used analysis. And where used analysis, you're able to go out and say, I want to find every place that have a certain substance group. Let's say, for example, substances that are on the REACH Annex list. And I down here and I specify, I want to get all of the REACH Annex 14s that are in any of the products that my suppliers have provided me at all. I can search for the end components or assemblies that my suppliers have given me, or I search for materials that suppliers are using to formulate it. I can also search for where I might be using them in my own products. Specify the scope of the search, and you tell CDX what you want to go look for. Substances, and this is a place where you can do a multi-select. If you hit on the Shift key, you can select an entire range, or on the Control key, you can select just onesie-twosie kind of thing. Once you have picked those, you apply that, and CDX will go through and tell you those substances are present in all of your products and in what amounts. So this allows you to determine not only what is in your supplier submissions, but also how much the total amount is. Because some of these regulations are based on if you're importing a certain amount into the EU, for example, if you're importing a certain amount of coal and it exceeds 100 tons a year, then you're required to register with REACH. So knowing how much is in all of a product is important, as well as knowing how much is in just one specific supplier component. So this kind of provides a detail of what the end game is. Now, the process of getting here, what you do is you will do what is known as a material data sheet request. In our material data sheet request, you are specifying who is my supplier for this product and what part of my company are we sending it to. If supplier is registered in CDX, all you have to do is search for their name and find where they are at, or find their identity according to the system. So I can come in here, and as I told you, the example I'm going to use is a company that has a product PM plastic metal. Now, to have all of their name, I just have to have enough of it to be able to find it in a list and get down to a small enough list that I can find. Once I do that, CDX will fill in all the information for them. You don't have the company in CDX and the supplier needs to be contacted via email. You can check not registered in CDX box. However, when you do that, it now becomes your responsibility. Just with that company is the contact for this topic. Suppliers in CDX, it's their job to maintain that information. If the supplier is not in CDX, you have to tell us who to contact, and we'll contact them by email. There's fields that you can provide, but that are required are just the ones with a red asterisk, and there's relatively few. However, what sometimes catches people unawares is the fact that the country is required. There's a good reason for that, and once you understand it, it makes sense. But until you understand it, you think, why are they requiring me to tell them what country the supplier is? Quite simply, the letter that we will send them will be to them in their native language so that there's a good chance that they understand it. Use the country to determine what language we should send that in. Now, you still override that by coming down here and saying, I don't want it in English even though it's in the U.S. I know that this particular supplier speaks Spanish. However, by default, when you specify the country, it's going to the language, and it will translate the message to them in their language. Gives you the opportunity to enter some personal information or customize the message. So you can say, we discussed on the phone, or whatever you need to say to tell them. However, this text that you type in does not get translated, so you do want to use it sparingly. If you have the capabilities to translate that language, you can do so. When all the information, and get this to the supplier, you also have some options to specify what is the scope of the declaration that you're asking for. My company's name is PM Global, but they have specific requirements for their operations in Europe. So if the supplier is going to be submitting for the parts in Europe, it has to give additional information. As mentioned before, you can tell them that you actually want them to report against a specific substance list. So come in here and specify that you are looking for a specific set of chemicals that they can reply to, or tell them we actually want a full material declaration and we want everything in the product. For this one, I'm not going to select that, but you tell them that you want them to report for specific products or family products or whatever scope you want. You could even come in here and say, I want you to report for all of the products you provide me. However, it would be very difficult to drill down, so in most cases you would probably want to specify specific parts. Okay, so as you're working through these dialogues and gathering this information, the first times it can be a little bit tedious. There are some opportunities for you to specify additional information that you might use. If you're doing this as part of a particular campaign, you identify the campaign on here. You have a code that you use to identify the supplier in your in-house systems. You classify that supplier code and the name that your in-house systems might need so that it makes it easier to link the information back. You specify the drawings, you can specify the purchase orders, any information that's necessary to help you tie the information back to what you would need. And if you have filled in the forms, all you do is hit send. Now, the first couple of times you're doing this, the people actually doing the work will need to figure out how to do this. So we do recommend that the first few times you use the form. But once you have gotten this down and you've got the information in such a way that you're used to providing it, you no longer need to do it one at a time. It is possible for you to simply specify all information in a spreadsheet and send her that way. We filled all the fields that are required and you have all the information. CDX simply pops up a message that tells you that it is working. And then sends out that request, and that email goes to that supplier notifying them that it's available. Now, that form is duplicated in an Excel template that we provide, and I'll show you how that template's available. But basically, you have the same fields that you have from that form. It allows you to do several hundred requests at a time rather than doing them one at a time. The in that you send out uses the paradigm that goes to your outbox. All the requests that I have sent from my company will appear in my outbox and provide your way of tracking who made requests to and has responded. So I have a number of statuses that you can use to track. I want to see all those that are still outstanding, or I just want to see the ones that are new or just recently sent. New means that you've created it but not sent it. Sent means you've sent it but the supplier has not responded. That request that I just created, and that goes to PM Plastic Metal, and it tells them that I want a submission for part PM2134. Now, the company receives that email, that queue to log into CDX themselves. And so I'm going to use actually a different browser to represent that I am a different company now. Before PM Global, now I am PM Plastic Metal, as CDX shows me in the top right-hand corner here. And it gives my identification as a user and also the company. In here, and I go to my inbox as that supplier, and look for the material sheet requests that I've received. And then CDX, I search for all the new ones, and I can specify due dates or from what customer or whatever I want. If I've got just a few of them, so I can do the whole list. And it gives me the information on what is being asked for. It tells the supplier exactly what my customer is asking me to provide. Use to reject this. If I no longer provide that part for the customer, I can tell them we're not doing business for that product anymore. It's not in our formulations, or we're providing it. And supplier the option to tell you not only that they are rejecting the request, but why. Or the supplier can assign the material data sheet if they've already got one for PM2134 sitting around the system, or I've got a 1752 that they can import into the system. Or simply create a material data sheet, which for companies that are just getting started lower in the supply chain, that will be the most common. When that, CX automatically assigns that to the material data sheet request so that the tracking is maintained on both your side and theirs. Once you click that accept, either assigning it or creating it, the status for the company that sent the request change. It will no longer show the data sheet request has been sent. It will now know that this is working on it once that's saved. So that gives you up to real-time sort of tracking of what exactly is going on. And this information can be transmitted to your in-house solutions if that's what's appropriate. For the supplier being faced with trying to provide this declaration, it can be somewhat daunting. They specify the parts that they include in that product and simply add them in. Or choose to use what we call the regulation wizard. The regulation wizard, the relations that you told them you required them to report upon, are automatically checked and highlighted. And all I have to do is step through all of the chemicals that are according to those regulations. So in here, and I say, okay, you've asked me for REACH SVHCs, so I need to find the REACH SVHCs that are in my products. So I can come here and actually ask CDX to search for all of the chemicals that are regulated under that specific regulation. And CDX will come back with a list of the chemicals that track. You can also do this via other fields in the form. So there's multiple ways that a supplier can provide the submission. The ultimate goal is to get all of the information that is required for the regulation. Once has completed that submission, it back you will receive that information in your inbox as a customer. So now look for the material data sheets that the supplier has provided. Gives me all of them. Now I'm getting too many here, so I can actually tell it. I only want to see the ones from specific suppliers. So I'm here and say I want the ones that came from PM Plastic. This is a list of everything that they have sent me. If I further want to filter this and get it down to only the ones that I've received, let's say in the last 4 months, I go over here and simply specify I only want the most recent ones. And now I get those products and they're listed. I have the option to review these and to see if they are compliant using the CDX built-in checker. Will review substance and tell me if there's anything that is a problem with it according to the various regulations. Those messages can be errors or they can be warnings. In this, it's saying this may be something that is permitted under certain regulations, but not told us that that's the case. As a customer, then choose to accept or reject that submission. If you choose to reject it, then we'll ask to tell them why you are rejecting. And there will get a notification that you received their data sheet, you reviewed it, and did not consider it acceptable. That email notification tells them that they need to go back and fix it. Okay, what about minutes to the top of the hour? So I do want to stop. That covers the introductory demonstration. Are there questions on anything that was covered or anything I didn't cover?
So got it, and it's maybe more basic about CDX itself, but I'm a tier 1 supplier, so I have 15,000 plus parts to sell 1,300 different part numbers. Can you at least give me an overview? How am I to load in that I'm going to request from my suppliers the data, but then roll that up to so my customers can pull their assemblies out? I don't get the structure there.
Yep, there are a couple of ways you can do that. Let me walk through a simple little exercise of doing that. When I'm creating a data sheet, so let's say I am your company, and I am creating a new product. And this thing that I sell to my customer. And let's just give this an arbitrary part number. When I create this product, I've got a couple of choices of how I add things to it. If I'm actually creating parts for it, I can create those parts individually. Or if I receive those from my tier 2 suppliers, I come here and I say, I want to get the accepted data sheets that I've received from my suppliers. I attach that to my part. All the information about the product composition, all regulatory information, everything my customer is going to need to know about that part from my supplier comes with it. And I build this up so if it's a typical scenario for a tier 1, you're an assembly of a multiple of parts that your suppliers have provided you. Build up that assembly, the content of it. I already have that one. And where the strength of CDX lies. If you had to re-enter all of that information or rebuild that product, you wouldn't do it. It would be too much work. You know, if you figure if an OEM has 100 suppliers and each one of those suppliers has 100 suppliers, just going down to tier 2, you're talking about 10,000 different parts. But if you got down to tier 5 or 6, you're talking in the millions. And to get down to the chemicals, you may be talking in the billions. So it would become unmanageable to try to report all of that. Simply adding the supplier's information to yours, what CDX will do is it will provide it to the customer as your submission, and all the supplier data on what's in the product comes along for the ride, but doesn't identify who those sub-suppliers are. So get the full composition data all the way down the supply chain, and all you have to do is add those parts once. So in order to notify your suppliers that you wanted to do that, you send out the requests to the suppliers specifying those parts that your Tier 2 suppliers need to give you. And then once your Tier 2 suppliers have done them, you actually build up your product BOM in CDX for submission to your customers. Now, the other nice thing about CDX, or another nice thing about CDX, is you specify your customers. You don't have to submit the same information over and over to your customers. In other words, I can come in here and say, I list to 3 different companies. I sell a CM Demo 3, AM Demo 2, and Demo 1. On here, I can specify the customer's part number for this part, each customers. I have to specify, I don't have to provide the same data sheet over and over to each customers. I build the data sheet once and send it to all of them, and, sorry, that was in the wrong field, and then CX sends it to the customer with the part number on it, with your mission. So you call it what you call it internally when you do the system, then apply it to your customers, call it what they call it, and CDX takes care of that mapping for you. So selling a off-the-shelf type part that you sell to 1,000 different companies, you build it once, you list those 1,000 companies once, and CDX takes care of everything else. In order to send it to them, you simply hit propose here. And CDX, before it will allow you to send it, it will check over and tell you if there are any issues that need to be fixed. And if errors, it will actually require you to fix them before you send them to your customers. That's why it's so important to review your supplier submissions when you receive them, because you want to make sure that they haven't given you errors so that you're able to send on what they've provided you to them, to your customers. The thing that's important to understand is you're able to see who your supplier was. CDX will show you the Tier 2 company's name and everything about it, but you won't know if the Tier 2 bought those things or manufactured it themselves, and your customers won't know whether you bought the assembly or manufactured it. It's yourself. It identifies only one tier up and one tier down is all you're actually able to see the companies. You're able to get the composition all the way down the supply chain. So there is a fair amount of effort in building that BOM once. But once you built it, it stays available for revision and modification going forward, and all revisions and modifications are release controlled. This is currently a version 001 submission. Once sent this to the customer, it would become version 1.0. Ensures that you and the customer are both looking at the same thing on version 1.0. And if you had to modify it later, it would then become revision 1.01, and you sent it, it would become 2.0 and so on. So you're ensured of you and the customer and you and your suppliers all agree on what it is you're talking about.
A process to kind of uploading that AEM link, or do you end up having to recreate that for each assembly in the end?
You have the information in an in-house system. You can create those links and transmit them via web services, and there's no additional charge for doing that. If you don't have an in-house system, you can import the information in a couple different formats. One is the IPC 1752 That's probably the most common one that's used currently. That is CDX Web Services. We can help you to formation in a way that CDX can read it.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, one thing that just typically come up is all this cost and how is the pricing handled. The price is based on how many data sheets you receive from your suppliers. Building your product in CDX has no cost whatsoever. You don't even need to purchase a license to build your product and start evaluating what you put into your product yourselves within the tool. Nothing to keep everybody from the phone from having somebody go register their company and start building up the products and start seeing, do you in fact have areas that you need to be concerned about? If you don't have the chemical composition of your product, very high likelihood that there are substances in there that you're not even aware are there that cause problems. It is amazing how often paints, for example, can substances that are regulated because a lot of the regulated substances are good pigments. And while there's a minimum amount that some of the regulations require, those minimum amounts are measured in milligrams. So it's very likely that they are present in your products today and you don't even know it. So it is one of the reasons why we do say you need to drill down to the basic chemicals, because that's what the regulations are asking for. We're operating, again, we copied CDX as a base starting point from IDS, which some of you may be familiar with. It's been in use in the automotive industry for 15 years. For the first 3-4 years, some of the companies tried getting declarations of compliance from their suppliers, basically a certificate that said, my product's compliant, I'm not including anything that's on any of these lists. They then started requiring suppliers to provide material declarations. They started finding out that the suppliers really had not performed the right due diligence to what was there and what was not. Not until you actually ask somebody what is in the product that you find out whether or not the regulated substances are there. The pricing is oriented in such a way to make it very low barriers to acceptance, and the pricing is also very favorable for the very small companies and the very large companies. And AEM has negotiated an arrangement by which the pricing is very favorable for everybody. So you will probably find that the pricing is a lot lower than you expect, but will require your company to have an understanding of how many products they're trying to collect data for to get a handle on exactly what the cost will be. And one other point is we have operations globally. We have support available globally. You've got the strength of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise behind the solution. We've been doing this for a long time, and again, we've learned a lot of what works and what doesn't work. We're at the top of the hour. Are there any final questions?
This is John. Let me wrap things up real quick here. Thank everybody for participating. A couple of points. Number one, a lot of the things that Chuck was talking about as far as pricing and that are made available because we as AEM have our training programs together, and they believe with us that an educated user is a user who can do this properly and also is less likely to run into problems. So we are working closely on training and integrating that with